Alright, in this video I'm going to be putting a staircase back on the back side of my house, and everything will be in the description for product links. You can see I do have a bit of an issue here. The siding doesn't come over far enough. I'm going to have to fix that later. I'll have to get some more siding. I have to remove that tar paper and the old J channel and stuff like that. For the most part, I'm using 2x8s and 2x10s for the main structure, and then I'm going to use deck boards for the top, and it's all pressure treated. And this is what it used to look like before I started. Obviously, I've been plucking away at this throughout the summer, so you can see it used to have a collapsed set of concrete stairs, and there was no patio stones around the house before, so lots of changes being done. But now it's time to put those stairs back on, and this is a 2x8. You can see they're about 7.5 inches in width, and that's going to be the first layer, and then I'm going to use 2x10s that I'm going to rip cut for everything else. And the landing is going to be 6 feet plus a half an inch, so 72.5 inches across. And then I'm going to make the top of the landing 36 inches, which I believe is the minimum standard. I got a bit of an issue with the pool where it is because it just makes everything awkward. I can't really do things as I want. And I'm going to add 24 inches on each side, and that's so that I have 2 stairs coming off the landing. That'll give me a 12-inch stair, but because of the width of the deck boards, it's actually going to give me a 12.5-inch stair for each stair on each side. And for 2x lumber, dimensional lumber, it's 1.5 inches thick, so you may have to remove the 1.5 inches for width, depending on how you're building your staircase. Now, for most of the cutting, I use a circular saw, and then these boards are what's called sienna brown, and I do have a cut and seal product for these. It just goes on just like paint, and it's just to seal up the ends so that they don't rot or suck in moisture as fast. And you can see that I'm using 5 on my base layer, and like I said, those are 5 2x8s cut to 72.5 plus 48 inches, and that's 48 inches for the actual stairs. And I didn't do any rip cuts on those or anything like that. And for most of the assembly, I'm using these 4-inch GRK fasteners, and I'm also using joist hangers as well on some of the boards. Obviously the board up front, I'm not going to put a joist hanger on it, but instead I'm just going to use 3 of these GRK fasteners, and that's going to be good enough. And then for all the other ones, I just put 2 of the GRK fasteners through, but on the inside of the stairs, I'm going to have a joist hanger. So you can see I've got the first board. It's going to be 12 inches back. And like I said, I'm going for a 12.5-inch stair, and obviously the deck boards are going to have a thickness to them as well. So that's why I went with the 12 inches back. And again, 12 inches is probably a good size for a stair, a little bit bigger than it needs to be, but 12 is probably about right. And like I said, for the remainder of the joists, I'm just doing 2 screws into them to hold everything together, and then I'm going to come around with these joist hangers and these 8D nails by Simpson. They're called strong ties, and I'll just bang those in, and that'll increase the strength of the overall staircase. Obviously, there's a lot of wood in this staircase, and that's probably the downfall of designing your staircase in this sort of 3-box method, is that it does eat up a lot of lumber on the inside, but it is probably easier than doing stair stringers if you don't have a lot of experience with stair stringers. If you're doing something a little more fancy, like having a wraparound staircase like this is going to be. Anyway, for leveling this off, you can see I've used some paver stone wedges that I had from doing the patio before, and I'm just going to use some of these 6x6s that I have from left over from building the planter, and I'm going to drill through the 2x8s and into the 6x6s and just level the staircase off that way. So obviously I've used the level already. Just use those angled pieces of brick that I had laying around to use as wedges, make sure everything's level, and then like I said, I just drill through those 6x6s and cut them at the appropriate height. And because I'm using the 1-inch thick deck boards, I'm going to do 16 on center, but because it's not going to be a perfect 16 on center, I'm actually going to go 15 on center, because obviously I need something for the stair tread to sit on. So 15 on center rather than 16 on center. Otherwise, I would have one just at the end, and it would be too close to the 6x6s. So like I said, because the stairs are going to wrap around, I do need those short 2x8s to actually have something to put the stair treads on. And on top of all of the joists, I'm going to put down this joist guard, which just sticks down like tape. I found that this particular product didn't stick that well. And obviously I did it off camera, but I did come around with a stapler and had to staple it down as well. It lifted off fairly easily, so I don't know. I think the blue product that I use a little bit later in the video is much more sticky and overall better, but I guess this black product is okay. And that's really the first box built. For the second box, like I said, I'm using 2x10s because I need a little bit more thickness on these to keep the stair height the same, because obviously I had to level that one. So I'm cutting these 2x10s down to 7 3/4 inch. Ultimately, my stairs are going to be a little bit higher than they should be based on building code. However, they're going to be within OSHA specifications, and honestly, once they're built, they don't seem like they're too big at all. So the stairs actually are at just over 8 inches, and I think the building code is going to say 7 3/4, you know, without doing a whole lot of research on it. Once I've done all the rip cuts on the 2x10s, I just sort of do a bulk application of the cut and seal on all of the cut ends. So either where I ripped it or where I used the circular saw. Anyway, lots of cut and seal used. And just like the first box, I am using the 4-inch fasteners through all of the boards. Now I used less joist hangers on each of the boxes moving up, and that's because some of these boards are going to sit right on top of the boards underneath it, which means there's no way they're going to flex or move. And once these are in, I did do, I think these are called hurricane fasteners. Anyway, I used those to fasten the two boxes together. So I put 6 in the bottom one, and I'm going to add another stair. There's going to be 8. So right now I'm sitting at 12.5 inches, like I said, all around, and that'll be my first step. So 12.5 inches for the first stair. For the tread depth, now obviously I'm going to do 12.5 for the second one as well, and then you can see that I've added some corner pieces, and that's because obviously you want something for the boards to sit on, and that was the change I made. And like I said, for this joist guard, this blue tape, which is, I think it's called Blue Skin WD, is stickier. And I also use that for the sort of what would be the ledger board. Obviously this thing can't rip off the wall because it's complete solid wood. For where the ledger board would go, I put 2 layers of that blue tape and then 1 layer that goes up and under the flashing to act as the ledger board. And what I've done is picture frame corners on these for the first row of boards for each of the stairs. And then for the rest of it, I've just inserted the boards as opposed to doing angle cuts all the way through. And then at the wall, because it goes a little bit wider than the house wall, I had to do about a 50-degree cut. Overall, pretty simple. Doing the rip cuts does sort of necessitate a table saw because they are fairly long rip cuts. So what I do is just take a ruler, determine what the narrowest point is, and then I just do the rip cut off the narrowest point. It's not that big of a deal because there's going to be a kick panel installed as well, and that's going to hide any sort of discrepancy in the width of the stair tread. Like I said, did the rip cut on the table saw, dropped it in place, and for the spacing between boards, I'm just using the ruler that I have. So not too scientific, no special tool there, but I don't know what, it's probably about 1/8 of an inch. Not too much space, it's probably the bare minimum you'd want to go, but it works for me. I'm pretty happy with the spacing. And you can see that I'm installing the kick plate there, which is again just another deck board. And like I said, it hides any gap that you might have from the rip cut that I did. And for the screws that I'm putting in, I'm using mainly 2.5 inch deck screws, although I did go back and there was some 3-inch ones on sale, so I did get some 3-inch ones as well. And one thing to note, when I'm doing most of the ends of these boards, I do pre-drill them. I find often the boards will splinter at the end or sort of split as the screw goes in all the way. So that's something I try to avoid, and that the way I did that is by pre-drilling all the corners. And this is sort of almost done now. You know, pretty straightforward to put the deck boards in. And you can see that there's a lot of wood under here. There's no way any of these boards are going to flex because there's about 24 inches in certain spots of solid wood from top to bottom. And one thing to point out, for the kick plates, I don't do the joist protecting tape on those. However, I do lay down some construction adhesive onto the board, which will serve as sort of a waterproofing as well. And just for interest's sake, the overhang that I'm using on the stairs is 1/2 of an inch. So once I've got the boards cut, I just use the ruler and get it close to a 1/2 inch. When you're putting in the screws, you got to review that 1/2 inch every once in a while, because if the boards aren't straight or the screws pull the board left or right a little bit, it could throw that 1/2 inch off. So I did find it is important to continually check that 1/2 inch. And then for the last boards going in here, obviously I just cut them all up, used the cut and seal, got them in the position that I wanted them, and then just slammed all the screws in about 10 minutes. Pretty easy to do. And again, for the thinner boards, these ones that are rip cut, I do pre-drill all the holes. So not only on the ends do I pre-drill them, but for the boards that are about 2 inches in width, I also pre-drill those. And this is what I came up with. Overall, I think it looks pretty good, particularly when contrasted to what used to be here. Now, the one thing, either the house isn't straight to the pool or the pool isn't straight to the house, which is an annoyance, but it's not really something I could change. I would rather have the pool have been straighter, which would have given me more space to work with, but it's what I got, so I can't really change that. And I'm pretty happy with the overall look of the landing and staircase, and it's super solid, so that's good, I guess. Anyway, thanks for checking out the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.